Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the iFlight Defender 20 Lite HD with the O4 on it. And one of the things you might have noticed right out of the gate that it's got kind of a specialized battery, which does mean if you want this, you're going to have to buy these kind of batteries unless you're going to do something very serious on the DIY side of things. But one of the things that's nice about that is that we can just simply click it in and the battery's all set. Now this one has taken me a while to get there. You may have noticed here on the side a little extra. There's more to that, but we can get into that as we go along. But this one did take me quite a while to get done, and we'll discuss that as well. Of course, as I normally would for something like this, we're going to fly it slow and flat, or smooth and flat maybe I should say. And then we're also going to fly it a little bit more aggressively, which is my preferred and fun sort of flight style, which, yeah, can get a little hairy sometimes. Should mention that it comes with a nice little case that everything fits inside with a few accessories. One thing I don't know is, do you get this with the quad? This is a little standard XT30 and balance lead adapter for these sort of batteries. If that comes with the batteries, if that comes with the quad, not certain. But they also have on their website a USB-C based charger where you can put in 3 of these little batteries. These are 2S batteries, and if I remember correctly, because I can't see under this lighting condition, I believe these were 600 milliamp 2S batteries. It's printed on the back, but again, I can't see that. We also get an extra set of props. Normally there'd be 4 in there, but I lost one and broke another. See, that one. We also get a couple little tools, a prop remover, and an extra set of spongy pads for the bottom. Several different documents, and 1 sheet of stickers. I feel like I look chubby in this shirt, like my former self. What do you think? Don't answer that. Don't answer that. The quad with the battery weighs 107.3 grams on my scale. Carbon fiber looks to be 2 millimeters thick. But note that carbon fiber right up here at the camera mount gets half as thick up here. So we got to be careful. And motor post to motor post, it looks like about 87 millimeters. We're going to start off with which is kind of an ideal setting for this sort of quad. And I'm going to let it sit here on the table for just a moment so you can understand that, you know, out of the box, mine had this shaking when I sat on the table as well. I suspect because this, you know, it does create thrust, that is some sort of dirty air that is making its way through the props and kind of making the camera or the whole quad kind of jitter around a little bit. But you can see in flight, it's doing just fine. Yeah, I started off at 20 megabits. I've been asked that a few times about the DJI bug. I know that Ian over at Mads Tech, he made a video about DJI and goggles issues. It seems like there's probably more than one, because we've seen it here on a few times on my channel where it doesn't always go up to 60 megabits per second using Goggles 3. But anywho, this is a morning flight before I went to work. 4 miles an hour on the wind, which is pretty much dead calm, but I did note I could feel a slight breeze on my skin. So this, as you can see, I've got my collared shirt on. I typically wear a collared shirt. Being I work in IT, it's been pretty rare that I've ever had a time in my life where I needed to wear a tie, although it has happened a time or two. But you can see we switched over from the DVR into the VTX recording, which is with Rocksteady, to give you a sample of both. I try to do about a minute of both for these type of quads, and I also try to give you different sorts of flight samples for the design, or as it's designed flight style, which is, in my opinion, this or something very, very similar to this, where you're just out filming, maybe you're exploring, and you're not necessarily filming. You just like this sort of format for safety purposes, and you just want to go out and be like a bird and fly around and not get super aggressive. But I wanted to make sure I included the onboard Rocksteady footage as well as the DVR footage. For those that aren't in the know, the DVR footage does not have any stabilization. That's raw, kind of out of the camera. So what you see is kind of what you get along with the beta flight information that you saw printed on screen. That's kind of all normal for traditional FPV quads. But let's switch over to a different flight on a different day with different variables. Gonna jump right into the flight here right at the beginning after taking off. This particular flight, 77 degrees, so warmer than the last flight, but the wind is 8 to 15 miles per hour. And yeah, I could feel this one on my skin as well. Of course, it wasn't as strong as the first flight I showed you at only 4 miles an hour. But you can kind of tell from my flight that it is pushing me around, and we're seeing some extra kind of movement in the video through the goggles, which is the view we're looking at now with the Betaflight OSD elements on screen, which can tell you more that you might want to sort out, whether it's the value that I'm flying at, or the flight time, or the flight mode. Air mode shows there on the right, which is actually, you could be in angle mode or horizon mode and still be in air mode as well. But I'm flying in rate or acro mode, so no self-stabilization going on here. But we are going to eventually switch over to, yet again, the onboard VTX with Rocksteady footage, because I want to make sure that for those people that are interested in these sorts of quads, you can see this in various sorts of weather formats. It's one of the reasons why I do these things over the course of a week or two, or in this case, like almost 4 weeks. I think it's about 4 weeks. As I want to fly them in many different scenarios, so that if you live in a place like mine that has all these different scenarios, you'll know what to expect, or have a rough idea of what to expect out of a quad like this. By the way, this was sent to me plug and play, so it's designed to use with a DJI remote, which even the one I had wouldn't have been compatible. The one I had was the old black square one, and I sent that away in a giveaway a long time ago, or at least a fair bit ago. So I don't have a DJI remote, so then I was going to just, well, easy enough, I'll just wire in a receiver. So the weight that I showed you is with my wiring and my receiver. Then it got to be a little bit of a difficulty there, because when I looked up the flight controller didn't have a wire map on the iFlight website, and there's no silk screening on the flight controller itself, so I was kind of, out to lunch as far as where do I need to wire this receiver up. So eventually, through the contacts at iFlight, and this was sent by iFlight for review. No, I did not pay for it, but they do not get any say in my videos. I'm sure they're not happy with the fact that I'm discussing all of this and the fact that it's taken me so long. But anyways, eventually I did get a, it's a 3D rendering of the flight controller with the wiring that was necessary in order to figure out. And it's interesting because if you use an iFlight Express Solaris receiver, the wiring is different than if you use essentially anything else, I think. But that's plenty of this flight. I've got one more that I wanted to show you in different temperature wind conditions. It's this one right here, which is inside. So we keep our house at about 67, 68 normally, but I can't remember what the temperature was outside, so it may have been cooler than this or warmer than this in the house. And of course, the only wind is the wind that would be blown around by our HVAC system, which is minimal at best. So I do want to show you this flight a little bit again, so you get an idea. We have seen other quads for indoor flight that have issues with the onboard VTX storage. The case I showed, I don't want to give it a bad name necessarily, but the case that I showed and solved was for the, wasn't it the Meteor 75 Pro 04, I think it was. So with the Rocksteady footage got all messed up on that one until you changed the PWM value. I think I changed it down from 96 to 48. I think that was the fix. Geez, I need to watch that video again myself. But at any rate, so I wanted to fly this inside because somebody's going to ask, when it comes to inside flying, the lighter the better. But of course, with DJI, there's only so much weight we can go down to. If you look on my channel, you'll find a lot of flights inside. Just keep in mind that I've been flying inside for over 9 years in this same house. Of course, it's gone through remodels and changes and stuff like that, but flying inside is challenging, and especially if you're flying inside with a larger prop, a bigger battery, something like this with 2S at what is it, 107 grams isn't terrible. It's very doable, as you can see I'm doing it here. But I wouldn't get something like this to fly inside to go fast, and that's why I'm not showing it going fast. I do want to forward to a section. I will go upstairs, and most people ask me, or some people ask me, why I don't go upstairs, and I hope to explain that a bit. Okay, we're going to go around the corner and we'll go up the stairs. I don't go upstairs because it's not fun for me to go upstairs. There's really, we've got spaces in our bedroom and stuff like that, but there's no through lines to it. You can't go from one room to the next, so you're kind of going in the room and then you're going back out the room. By the way, the bathroom is a sanctuary that I did for my wife several years ago. Clawfoot tub, heated floors, chandelier, TV, candle stations, kitchen height cabinets. It was all about what she wanted, which I don't mind. I mean, I'm a guy. I don't spend a lot of time in the bathroom, and I certainly don't take baths. I don't like to sit in my own filth. Maybe I just get dirtier than most people. But then eventually we make it all the way through all the bedrooms. But I wanted to show you this because I don't go upstairs because it's just not fun for me. Staying on the other 2 levels, the basement and the main floor, is more fun. But this is the part I want you to see. Uh-oh. Yeah. Well, that didn't turn out so good, now did it? But here is a picture of the aftermath. And I don't know how well you can see, but the camera is tilted sideways. Of course, I couldn't tell in the moment when I took this picture that it actually kind of focused on the back motor. But you can see the camera is really wonky there. And as we cut back to this view here, live here on the desk before we go into our final flight, this part of the carbon fiber just broke off. The circle that should be holding this rubber dampening in is pretty much gone. So I wanted to get to this phase of the video and show you that. I've also got a little bit of plastic damage up here, but this got damaged before I took it on the outside flights. Let me rephrase that. That wasn't completely accurate. This got damaged before I did my faster, more aggressive outside flights. So I think I detect some extra jiggle in the outside flights, and it could be from this, but it's going to be here for you. Okay, some specs for this flight. Winds 10 to 13 miles an hour, and the temperature is 62 degrees. The pool has been filled full. Geez, get out of your way here. The fool is trying to talk to you right now. That's what the fool is. I tried to say the pool is full. Jeez, never again. Not ever saying that again. And we got the heater turned on, so it's all ready for the kids and the wife. I don't really get in the pool that much, but I do get in the pool to try to lure them in. But one of the things about the O4 and flying fast, this is the O4, we're commonly call it the O4 Lite. I find it harder to do close proximity stuff, like flying inside, because the field of view is small. Now, many people have been trying different lenses, and which is awesome, but it seems like to me kind of a miss in the O4 or O4 Lite, as we're calling it. But I've heard a rumor, and I have no idea if it's true or not, that to get Rocksteady to work right, that DJI did some sort of reduction in the field of view. Don't know if that's, telling tales out of school or otherwise, but you may have noticed, especially on that fence pass, it seemed like the camera was jiggling a little bit, and I did check the camera after this flight to make sure that grommet didn't come loose from the carbon fiber, which unfortunately that carbon fiber goes from 2 millimeters thick to 1 millimeter right at where the rubber dampening is, and that's where I must have hit when I had that inside crash. And it was also a little bit of a struggle or a challenge to kind of get into the flow of the quad. iFlight sent it with 2 batteries, but one of the 2 batteries didn't work at all. It doesn't register any voltage whatsoever. I didn't tear it apart, of course, so I only had 1 battery to fly. So at most, in any one given day, I think I got 3 flights in on one Saturday or Sunday. So I flew it in the morning, then I charged, and I flew it again later in the day, and later in the day for a 3rd flight. And I really didn't feel like I got much rhythm with it. But after several days of trying to get flights with that single battery on this in my more preferred flight style, eventually I just had to pick one. And I've got one more that I'm going to follow up with here. Not a full flight, just it's kind of just a crashy segment because I did have some other damage that I need to make sure I disclose. And I nearly forgot that I had put together that crash flight footage. There's 2 crashes in one flight, but we'll only look at the segments that are the primary crash sorts of things. When I did the big punch out over the house, you could hear some prop wind up. There are some things you could do to combat that. But know that it does kind of force you down as you get that prop wind up. You can change some ESC settings, or you can change your idle settings in order to kind of combat that. Not all quads have that with the prop protection, but it does. It's something that we see more often in quads that have prop protection built in around them. Probably has something to do with the aerodynamics of the air flowing through that prop protection and the prop itself. And in this case, these are super light props. Which does mean it's efficient. Here we are, we're still flying around, and it's 3 minutes on this battery, and I never did nail the landing voltage, which for me, what I like to come in and disarm, and hopefully the battery recovers within, say, 5 or 10 seconds, is 3.5 volts per cell. Never did get that. I had a few that went ridiculously low because I just don't see the low battery warning that well in the DJI version of it, so to speak. But you can see we were at 3.4 volts per cell, and now it's sinking even further. We're going to jump directly into this flight. We're going to have a crash come up here in just a couple of seconds where I land on the hard cement. And this is where I think I break one of the prop protections, and I'll show you that damage when we get back to the desk. But then here in a few moments, I will give you a sample of how I was flying this day as well, because I did talk about kind of having a difficult time getting the rhythm of the quad, just having the one battery that I could fly at the time, because quite frankly, I was out flying a 4S quad about the same time I was flying this quad around, the one battery that I could fly it on. So that adjustment back and forth between those two dramatically different quads. One and the other one wasn't prop protected either, so no prop protection on the 4S quad that I was flying. But let's move ahead to the second part of this particular flight that does have a little bit of a crash in it. We're going to loop up over this tree. I think it's kind of a split S maneuver, and then as I try to hit the throttle and get up over those greenery, I snag a branch, which you probably heard it. I took one of the blades right off of one of the props, which I already showed you, and I lost another prop. So as much as I might try to fly out of this situation, which it is in my neighbor's yard, not a big deal. The neighbors knew I was flying. They never asked me to, knock on their door to let them know I'm going to go over to their backyard. They're like, yeah, just go ahead and get it. Watch out for landmines. They have a big dog, so landmines are the dog's production over there. But yeah, never do get out of it. Got to go pick it up by hand. So other than the carbon damage that I showed you from the inside flight, where this grommet doesn't really, well, it's not going to stay in there because there's no in there to stay into. The outside half, sorry, I had that way too low. The outside half of this carbon fiber is just gone. As you can see the difference between the two. I flew it like this for the faster flights because that happened on an inside flight. I always do the slower flights first, so kind of unfiltered, unfettered, so you know how it looks perfect out of the box, so to speak. Hopefully I don't have too many crashes during that, and then I do the faster, more aggressive flights second. So that's what we have here as well, but I did crash it inside. Something else I want to draw your attention to is there's only 2 screws here holding this top piece in. So this top piece really doesn't provide much protection, and as you saw in the picture from my inside crash after that carbon fiber, my camera got really wonky and it shoved this thing out of the way. Now the nice thing about how they've designed and constructed this is that it's not terrible to work on, and I did have to work on it. I put an Express LRS receiver right here, and then I took the wiring and I just kind of twisted it up, keep it nice and neat out of the prop line, and took it down to the flight controller. But the damage from that crash that I had over there by what we call the cabana, it's kind of a cook area or outdoor living space, is, well, some of the pieces are gone. As you can tell from this side, I've got the piece that mounts to the quad that would go, here around this way. But some of these other pieces are gone that would be out here. But that was my breakage out there in the cabana outdoor living space that broke off. And I did finish that flight with it this way. I just took it off afterwards. Of course, I showed you the carbon fiber where it broke. Now, as far as this wiring, and if we bring up the PDF they sent, we can take a closer look at that. So this is what they're calling the flight controller, Whoop AIO F411 V1.1 wiring diagram. And of course, they have the old DJI air unit there, and they have the O3 and the O4. So they show you all these things. It's just got a connector here on it. And this is accurate. It's also accurate that this schematic that they have here doesn't show any words because the flight controller does not have any words or silk screen. The chips have words on them, I'm sure, but the silk screening telling you what all the pads are just don't exist, at least in the one that I have and the pictures that they're showing us. But if we scroll down here, of course, they're showing you how to connect it for S-Bus. I think that's in S-Bus 1 too. I have a little bit of a hard time seeing it here. Yeah, S-Bus, it's printed right there on the screen. And then we go further down, you got TBS, DSMX, iBus up there. And here is where we've got the 2 different methods for Express LRS. So this method, on those 4 pads, and yes, it is 4 pads, that black line there is kind of covering up the gap between those 2 center pads. So this would be your wiring if you're using an iFlight receiver, but this is the wiring that I followed. I was not using it on iFlight. Why do I stutter on iFlight all the time? The iFlight receiver I'm using is, I think it's an EP2 from Happy Model, just one I had handy. And I did start with it this way, and I found that if I bound it up, or after I bound it, if I plugged in a battery, it didn't work. I could get the receiver, or the VTX would work just fine, but the receiver would die off. But if I kept USB plugged in, which it does have a USB port right here at the back of the quad, and I'll show that to you in a minute. But if I had USB plugged in and I'd already like confirmed the receiver was up and I put in a battery, it would stay connected. But as soon as I unplugged USB, I would lose connection with the receiver. So that's why I had to switch over to this other one. And I explained that because the way they have it typed here, it didn't really follow suit with the experience that I had, or the symptoms that I had. And so then, of course, it also shows you how to set your UART for that particular one. And then we go into more about the LED and buzzer and stuff for analog. But I wanted to show you that because if you have one of these or you have this particular board, this might come in handy for you if you're having troubles connecting a receiver, which is something I had to do. So this comes off with these 2 screws, as I said. But this part comes off with just these 4 screws, and they kind of angle in. You can kind of see, hopefully, there's some clips on the end of these things. And so you just get them here in the back, and you create a little bit of an angle, and then you push them down. They don't stay down, but it gives it a nice little home to seat into. And then you take your screw, and there's a brass fitting in there. You take your screw down through there, and it secures it quite well. Of course, you can fly this without the prop protection as well. That's something that does come up from time to time. It's a little bit curious to me. I don't really understand that, but I suppose if you got one quad and you don't want to use the prop protection, or you only have an affinity to use the prop protection when you're, say, flying around other people or something, or inside, and you're not doing that, so you want to take it off, you will get slightly better flight. I tested it on one battery. I didn't necessarily fly particularly well, and it did come after I'd had several crashes already. I didn't notice a whole lot of difference, and I still experienced the prop wind up on the big punch outs over the house. So it doesn't fly all that much different in my experience, but it is going to fly a little bit differently. For one, it's going to be a little bit more agile because you have less weight. It's also going to fly a little bit longer if you're just doing exploratory sorts of flight, because it doesn't have the less aerodynamic construction of the prop protection. So those are 2 things I can definitively tell you that it will be, because you're taking off the prop protection. The VTX is right down here. So after you get the prop protection off, let's say you're doing a repair. That's what I'm trying to work through. So you take this top piece off, you take this, well, you wouldn't even necessarily have to take this off, I don't think you would. But then we have some screws in here. There is a little board under here that holds the USB port as well as the LED port, which is this little jack underneath here. USB-C, of course, as well. But there is a little board that is not PCB. It's like aluminum or something, and that is right here. That screw holds it, and then we've got this screw, and then underneath the AIO, you've got more screws to where you can separate the carbon fiber from the bottom half that contains the VTX, and that gets you access to the flight controller at that point. And I've already shown you that schematic. It's right over here, I do believe. I don't think my wiring goes clear across the board. I think it just goes... Well, I can't quite see it, but I think it just goes over to this side. I don't think it's right here. I think it goes over to this side. So it's not terrible for this form factor and this size to work on. One of the main things I'm worried about is that carbon fiber gets smaller right here at a point where it's potential that we can have damage, and I did. And I didn't... Of course, the last part of that crash is from some distance of approximately ceiling height down to about the floor. I probably bounced off the steps and then hit the floor before I lost video. The battery did kind of come out, and then it reseated itself as it stabilized, so I lost video, and the DVR doesn't automatically start back up. That's why I kind of cut it short there. But obviously, there are a couple of different ways you can fly. I do wish to some degree, that the motors had some of the tape that I like to use for keeping motors on arms for carbon fiber. They don't have that. And when I had it apart, I noticed that they didn't leave the length of wiring so that it can come out. Matter of fact, if I just give it a little test here, you're not going to get... Come on, get in there. Let me grab my blue handled one here, because it's magic. Blue. Get this. So you can see there as I try to pull it down. Hopefully you can see there. As I try to pull it down. They didn't leave excessive wire length up in here to where you would have a problem with the motor wires getting actually down in the prop. So it's something that I like to see, but in this particular case, it's not going to become at a detriment. Of course, you've got both of your connectors for your O4, if you were to have the O4 version, right here, so you could easily check those to make sure they're seated, because I have had these come loose in other quads, you know, from crashing and whatnot. So pretty easy access, although if you need to take them out and say you get a wire that gets damaged or something, you are going to have to dig a little bit deeper than just, you know, fingers poke outside here. You can see we have our USB-C port for the VTX. It's available right over here. And then we have our binding button, which I believe that's it right over here. I can't hardly see. Again, I'm not wearing my glasses in the moment, and my vision is not that fine, but I believe that is our binding button. Is that cutout is slightly different than it is on any of the other sides, of course. But as far as a 2-inch 2S, I thought it flew as expected. I think when it comes to the faster sort of flight, the only thing that concerns me too much is about the durability of that carbon fiber, you know, and crashing that. I guess it should be a concern for inside flight as well. We have some prop wind-up that I experienced on the bigger punch-outs over the house, so that's something to note, but you can oftentimes combat that to some degree and some level. Don't forget with these batteries that you do kind of, you have to kind of buy the batteries that they have. It is possible you could DIY a solution, but then it's not going to be so slick. It's not going to be so much just plug and go sort of batteries. You're going to have a connector and probably make a hole in here, and then you're going to have to figure out a way to do a strap. So a lot to work there. And then, of course, as I mentioned previously, they have one of these for USB-C that you can take 3 batteries and plug it into and run. They also have a version of this I saw on Banggood that has a filter version. I'm wondering if that's the filter for the O4 Lite camera or if that's something else. So I was looking around and I noticed that. I apologize, I got kind of tongue-tied a few times during the course of recording this video. Hopefully I can chop that stuff out so I don't waste too much of your time. As far as pricing goes, pricing is a giant variable, depends on where you live and all the things thereabouts, but I am seeing on PyroDrone this for $311.99. Again, check to make sure how many batteries this comes with or not. Always look at your package contents, always. Doesn't matter what website you go to. When you're ordering something, especially something that has specific batteries, you want to make sure you get the batteries. I did see on Banggood that this was selling for less, of course, as you might expect. $239.99 is the cheapest version that I can find there. But, of course, you know, I'll have links to the iFlight Defender 20 Lite HD down in the video description below. Some of those will be affiliate links. Some of those won't. I'm not tied to it. This isn't my job. I don't need this to feed the family. So if you don't like affiliate links, just go to your favorite search engine like Google or whatnot. Type iFlight Defender 20 Lite HD. Oh, HD. And you should turn up a few results at least for this. Oddly enough, I went to the iFlight shop earlier before I started recording. 504. Bad gateway. iFlight, check your hosting for your shop. If you do have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise about the iFlight Defender 20 Lite HD, please let me know in the comment section below. I appreciate your time. And thanks for watching.